Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back. Welcome back to Nicola Land and welcome back to another session as we continue the series Sex and Sexuality. I am excited. I am super hyped because we have a new face. Her name is Gwyneth. Please say hi, Gwyneth.
Hi, everybody.
I want to know a little bit more about you, Gwen, so then perhaps our viewers, if that's okay, could know what perspective you're coming from. So, who are you? What do you do? Please.
So we're going to the titles. it's an area I hate to go to, but I will. I am Christian. I'm in leadership in Christianity. I'll just put it that way. And I have worked extensively in counseling trauma, counseling youth, counseling families. And I'm educated in terms of my background is in social work and psychology, very similar to Mr. Martin's background. What else can I say? Aside from being learned in terms of theology as well, I mix in the counseling that I do. I mix general counseling and psychology practice with theology. And I do it because I can't separate it because it is who I am. Yeah. So there is that place where it is my fundamental belief system. And I don't believe in lying to people. So I let people know from the start, no, I am not holding you to my standards, but I can only give counsel based on my standards and what I know. And that relationship with God is part of my life. And so I cannot separate it, right? So what I will say I do is Christian counseling. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you want to know.
No, I mean, as much as you want to share, we're happy to. So welcome to you. And of course, we welcome back Dominic. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Always good to be here in Nicola.
Excellent. So today we're continuing our discussion. We placed our discussion on pause last week. And so today we are going to continue from, well, not exactly where we left off, but we're going to take off from a different page. Last week we spoke about sex and we spoke about intercourse in sex and sexuality. Today we're going to focus a bit more on gender in sex and sexuality. Now, gender, I wish I could define it now that I'm speaking to you, but because the definition has changed so much, I'm going to allow Dominic and Gwyneth to do that for me. Please define gender, what you know it to be and what it is. Let's start with
Go ahead, Dominic.
When we talk gender, we're really speaking in terms of characteristics or behaviors that are associated with certain persons or groups. Yeah, well, persons. Yeah. So women act a certain way, men act a certain way. It was commonly understood, and just for the sake of our discussion, that your gender is synonymous with your sex. However, at this present time, there is various arguments and literature and philosophy that argues to the contrary, that your sex is different to your gender, and your gender is basically how you identify and the way in which you wish to express yourself despite your sex. Yeah. So that's the broad understanding in a synopsis.
Let's hear from you, Gwyneth. Thank you, Dominic.
I think Dominic covered it quite well. Not to be too controversial, but I think that it is necessary sometimes to, despite whatever we may personally believe, to understand the context in which things are being spoken about. And even when we talk about the things within context, it's important to understand how others define it so that when we have a conversation, there is clarity. So whether we may or may not agree with the associations that we make, it is necessary to be on the same page in terms of communication. Yes. So as much as the definition of gender is broadening to satisfy everybody's particular feelings or association for themselves, I think that's not necessarily the problem. The problem might be what is causing it to evolve. But the evolution of the term is necessary so that we know what we're talking about and we can discuss it clearly. Yeah?
I love it
I feel like
already.
you're pricking me and we've only just started this conversation. Relax, Nicola. We're getting there. Thank you so much, Glenna, for that. So you say, nah, I can't skip this and go. I need to touch on this right now. It's hard. So you're saying that it's not so much gender, but what is causing the broadening of the definition? Just expand on that a little bit for us so we get a clearer view as to what you're speaking about. I don't want to assume.
Okay. What I'm saying is essentially what we do when we are defining terms is we don't call a spade, right? And I think it's important for us to call spades by their name. And if that meaning has changed, we need to recognize it, identify it, acknowledge it, and use it correctly. The reason why is because when we're not being truthful, we are misleading people. You understand? And so that's the context in which I'm talking about it. And in anything, any term that you use, we try to be very politically correct these days. And I will use one that is very common. There was a time when the word retard was quite fine to say. But now the word retard is not fine to say because of the association. So we say differently abled. We say special needs. It's going to change again. And special needs is going to become offensive because there is a context in which we look at special needs. That is the problem, not the label itself. So when we dwell on the label, what we're actually doing is dwelling on the thing that doesn't matter. So in the case of gender, we have an issue where the term is evolving because the identity is evolving. And so what we need to address really is not necessarily the evolution of the term, but the evolution, what is happening in society that is causing persons to expand their view of themselves, whether or not that is healthy, whether or not it is toxic, and what is creating this lack of being able to identify with who you are and wanting to change it. And so when we approach gender in that way, that's when we're being effective. We're dwelling on the term, we miss the whole point.
Thank you so much. I'm literally trying to calm myself down, guys. I'm trying to calm myself down. Thank you so much. So I feel like you've really opened up the conversation and you're leading directly where I really wanted to go. So I'm gonna pose this question for both you and Dominic. And I think that will kind of help to expand on the point that you kind of touched on but didn't really go into. How is gender now affecting sexuality? People's sexuality. And let me clarify that question a little bit more, because a lot of people, like you made reference to, some people are just confused. They just tell you they're confused. Some people are so many different things. How is gender playing a role in
that? One philosopher said that sex is the highest expression of oneself. Yeah? Sex is the highest expression of oneself. Therefore, when we look at the whole context, even as Gwen said, We're using gender to really speak to the various ways in which persons identify. One of the highest expression of that is to do so within their sexuality, yeah, and within that whole zone and that context. So what we are seeing happening is just as the terms to identify are broadening, the ways of sexual expression is now widening itself and broadening itself, to the point now where within certain places you have children that are going to masturbation camps or camps to make it, to show them how to explore their bodies, yeah, because the term is expanding, because people are seeing themselves in a different way, because there is now therefore a need to help these young people to deal with the various, and I'll use this term, identity crisis that they are facing with. It opens up now a different realm of sexuality, and then it pushes the bar to what would have been the norm. Yeah. So in a society where we saw gender and sex as synonymous, yeah, and so that therefore meant that men act a certain way and women act a certain way, and this is how men and women interact when they reach a certain level of maturity. Because all that whole construct have been broken down, we are even seeing a breakdown in what we call sexual norms, or what is culturally appropriate to manifest or to represent yourself sexually.
I like that. I agree 100%. I would want to clarify just this, that what it really does is blur the lines. The expansion of it blurs the lines. More than blurring the lines, it creates a situation where you have confusion. It's no longer about freedom of choice. It's really about a corruption of choice, so that I can't really identify specifically what I am, or I identify what I am based on what I want to do with my life, so that my understanding of what is appropriate and what is inappropriate is now affected, so that I can get away with doing what I want. Yeah. So there is this place of when things happen, they don't happen. I'm trying to be clear. When things happen, they don't happen in isolation. Nothing happens in isolation. Everything happens. There's a statement, a saying my mother uses, I love to quote. She said, we are each other's life. And so when one thing happens in somebody's life, there's a ripple effect. And the expansion of the meaning of the word gender, or the evolution of the meaning of the word gender, happens simultaneously with liberalism. And liberalism has its pros and it has its cons, right? Because liberalism created an avenue for those who were being trampled upon to experience liberty. And what happens when you, and I'm going back to the misuse of terms, when you misuse a term, is that you could make something that is not something look like it, right? And so in the evolution of gender, the blurring of the lines, it happened because I am fighting an injustice. And so this is my injustice because this is what I want, as opposed to whether or not a freedom was being taken from you. Now I'm going to say something that's going to sound very controversial, right? When we disagree as human beings, sometimes we think it's okay to punish. because of that disagreement. And there is a place where the blurring of the lines caused persons who have divergent views to punish one another. And there is a place where the extent of the response was not correct. It wasn't right. And so now, if you treat me badly based on a stance that I've taken, what you're doing is making a martyr out of me. And so when, just to be very clear, so when we talk about the evolution of gender moving away from sex, moving away from male and female and into my expression of sex, which is I don't want to be pinholed into being female if I'm born with female genitalia, or male if I'm born with male genitalia. I want to be able to express my sexuality in the way that I want. If I take that and I have another side of society that is discriminating against me as a result of it, what you are actually doing is furthering my cause. Because now what I can do is I can say, I am just like the slaves, and I am just like the women, and I am just like thee. And we have this association of persons that are discriminated against, whose bandwagon I have now joined. And it further justifies my position, because now I can create a level of sympathy around it. And I know I'm jumping into the conversation head on, and I might be taking a leap further than, but it is the reality of the situation. I think there is a place where both sides of the argument did not treat with one another well. And what it might have done, because we did not address labels appropriately with the level that it needed to be addressed, because of the need to control the narrative and control the outcome, is what we've done is we've furthered the cause and the evolution of gender. We furthered the confusion in which we exist. And what we've also done is affected lives in such a way that there is a negative impact, particularly on those most vulnerable in society. Because the truth of the matter is that this evolution of gender and the concept of gender can move into places like, what if I like little boys, or what if I like little girls? That's the way I express myself. So there's a question of how far does it go before we say that it is toxic? You understand what I'm saying? Or how far does it go before I say you're discriminating against me because of my preference? You understand? And that's where the confusion comes in.
If I could just push it as well, because I think within any spectrum, too much of anything is good for nothing. Yeah, and any society needs a level of standard or moral in order to keep it functioning. Yeah, I believe it's Nietzsche that said, God is dead and we have killed him. Yeah, he pushes that. Most persons believe that when he made that statement, that he was actually celebrating the death of God. But he was actually saying, because of the moral decay of society, and in their killing, proverbial, philosophical killing of God, then society will now deteriorate into a place of anarchy, and they will now have to make something else their God, or make something else an idol to look to. So he's basically saying to us that within any society, we must have a certain structure. And even in this whole context where we see gender as not as being
fluid,
out of, quote unquote, out of order and without a structure, I see that it's very intentionally structured, yeah, to replace something. Yeah, and that is where the danger is coming in. Because so if we are looking at it from from the replace perspective, we are now replacing a concept of structure, family, norm, that has pushed society into a certain place. And we're saying that we no longer want that. We want a level of freedom. I would say the term flexibility. We want fluidity. So nothing is really set in stone. There's no absolute of anything. Now, if we talk in the psychological realm, when there's no proper scheme or structure in your mind, there is now a level of maladaptive manifestations and behavior. Yeah, and I think that is what also, as you talk about, Gwen, as it relates to persons not willing to really call a spade and identify something. We're really not willing to have the hard conversation, especially within certain circles, to say that the evolution of what is causing this term to have so many different meaning is actually a reflection of the irrational pattern that is prevailing our society right now. And it seems that if you talk that, then you now become or sound irrational. Yeah, and you can have that conversation the right way without, I would say, oppressing someone. Because one of the things with the truth is someone who does not want to hear the truth or someone who does not want change will always see your words as offensive.
Exactly.
So then we could push the conversation even further to say what would be therefore the antidote to treat with the core issue. And for some, there is no antidote outside of allowing me to do what I want to do.
Which is exactly what I was thinking.
Yes.
In that we spend a lot of time playing the blame game. And that is where we get back to the terms being used correctly. We spend a lot of time playing the blame game so that we don't have to actually deal with the problem. And we're not looking at we're not focusing on the solution. We're not focusing on the problem, and we're not focusing on the solution. We're just focusing on whose fault it is, right? And what that is actually a distraction. And the distraction is deliberate because the intention is that what I want to do, it's not about a solution, it's about my own way. And so we have many bodies in society, whether it's the LGBTQ, whether it is the church, whether it is social and moral bodies, whatever it might be. And they are all fighting in the same way. They're fighting for being right and casting blame. But if you focus on the outcome, then what you find is that you will begin to see the problem for what it is, and you will start to treat with what fixes the problem. So there is a problem coming out of the evolution of gender, whether people want to admit it or not. And the problem that is coming out of the evolution of gender is that it is damaging families. It is damaging individuals, whether the individual identifies as male or female, or whether they identify as anything else. It is not a situation where we can take the stance of whether we are Christian, whether we are not Christian, whatever we are. We cannot take the stance of, because you are on the wrong side, you do not matter. You understand? And so if we begin to realize that everybody matters, then we will treat with the damage in a particular way, right? And again, I know that is controversial to say, but the truth of the matter is that the solution is not in casting blame or judgment or tearing anybody down. The solution comes from a place of love and from a desire to heal and to see the person heal. And also the definition
what do
of
you
what
mean by heal, Gwen? Let me
I'm
push you a
getting
little
there.
further.
The
Yeah.
definition of what healing looks like, right? Now, my premise is a Christian one. But aside from the Christian argument, the definition of where healing comes from what is the best outcome for the individual that they can see themselves as fulfilled, happy, and healthy. So I'm stepping out of the box of living a life that is pure. I'm stepping out of that box because it's a box we argue all the time. And I'm saying to you, if you are in a place where what you are doing is toxic, whether or not it satisfies your need, the outcome on your life is toxic. And so when we begin to see that, then we will realize that the solution is to move away from that toxicity. And so the truth of the matter is, when you look at the breakdown and the evolution of gender, moving from male and female, you begin to see the increase of toxicity in society. And you can do the research and you will see it. The increase of not just broken individuals, but also broken concepts of self, broken self-esteem, broken value. You find persons are living the way they want to live or the way they say they want to live, but they are not happy. So even if I take it outside of the Christian argument, there is no fulfillment because I'm looking at the solution and the problem, face value, not based on my belief or anybody else's belief, but based on the facts that surround what is happening in society. So if we are saying that we're making society better by allowing people to do whatever they want, then really and truly, when you look at the results and the evidence, that is not what is actually happening. You understand? So that's what I mean when I say, look at the solution and look at the person and see whether they are healed. I can say that I am happy, but if there is something that is toxic in my life and I cannot internally live with myself, whatever I appear as on the outside is one thing, but am I really fulfilled on the inside? So I'm saying, even if we're looking at the evidence, right? And I believe in evidence from the place of assessment and research. Even if we look at the evidence of it, what we're seeing is that the breakdown is coming from the fact that we are misunderstanding who we are. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, as you said that, it reminded me of a book called Irreversible Damage. It's by American. She is a journalist, and she was concerned with the phenomenon of a number of young girls having doing what she calls gender mutilation or engaging in various sex changes, and the fact that they were not counseled into it, but the moment they said, listen, this is how I felt, then psychologists were therefore mandated to promote and to push them into that place. And what she found in her research was most of the times it would have been during a crisis period in their life or a transition period. And when they came out of that period, they went into further depression because they really were not satisfied. Yeah, they wanted to try to go back to who they were, but it was irreversible damage. And she was trying to advocate that, hey, we have to put some stipulations to protect these young children from laws that say that if I as a child say that, listen, I am not a girl anymore and I want to surgically remove my breast, and so to allow them to do it. Yeah, so that really touched on the point that you were making in terms of what we are saying now would make persons happy. There is enough evidence to prove that, to me, that's a plaster to the sore of what is the real deep-seated issue and why are you uncomfortable with yourself and feel the need to engage in this type of act. I know we could go even further, but I'll stop there for now.
And that goes back to, and I want to say this, it goes back to why we can't mislabel. Because when we mislabel, it's a cop out. We're taking the easy way out. And I want to also say this, the need to look at the solution, not just the doctrine, is important. Because if we stand in a place of religion, what we're actually doing is not addressing the issue in the areas where the issue is not supposed to exist, but it does exist. Yeah? And that, for me, is one of the most fundamental flaws and errors of the present day church. We are not addressing the issues that matter. We are addressing the issues that are easy to address. And just like the rest of the world, the church is deflecting on semantics.
I hate to put a pause in this conversation. I absolutely hate putting a pause in this conversation. And listen, woo, we're not ready for you. I love this conversation. I didn't even, like, every time I thought of a question, you guys answered it. The flow was amazing. We thank you again for being part of this conversation. Thank you, Dominic. It was, I feel like I learned so much and I am just so filled. So
thank you for the opportunity. And I think that this program pushes the envelope, and I think we can do with more programs like this. So congratulations on what you're doing. And I'm glad to be a part of whenever you would have me.
Thank you so much. So thank you to my viewers. Thank you to everyone that came to Nicola Land. You guys, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. It's getting better. I didn't even think it was possible, but it's getting better. And the conversation will continue, and we will keep talking about sex and sexuality. I do want a part 2 on gender because I feel like there is so much more that needs to be covered, especially as it pertains to the role of the church, the role of society, as far as gender is concerned. And we're still talking within the topic, sex and sexuality. Again, thank you for watching. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. Bye.